Hello, and welcome to Two Crones and a Microphone. I am Linda.
And I am Betty.
We are cultural midwives and a force for change using applied practical spirituality. We have been friends and colleagues for over 35 years. We will talk about wisdom practices we use in daily life. This is our 9th podcast, and the topic is how we reset, New Year's rituals. We will speak about why it's important to each of us, how to share with our families and friends, and how to reset for the new year or really any time. You just need a shift in perspective. We'll share practices and processes we can use in daily life, at home, work, and play. Grab a pen and paper, get ready, settle into your body, listen, and see what you can use in your life.
Imagine for a moment that you take time for tea or coffee or another beverage with your best friend and decide to brainstorm and share stories about how we reset for the new year or any time we need a reset. Linda and I want to invite you to join us in our conversation. Today, we're going to chat about older New Year's practices. Linda, I can remember back in the day when I was younger, you had a New Year's Day date, you went out, you partied, you had good times, any way you can imagine that. And it was just part of ushering in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what you did, right? You got all dressed up, you put your makeup on, your high heels, you went out the door. And if you were home and maybe had family there, you went out and made lots of noise. I know when I was living in Brooklyn and in Queens, we would go out pots and pans, when I was younger, and bang on those at midnight. I'm sure the neighbors absolutely adored us for doing that. And actually, now that I live up here in the Poconos, people set fireworks off at midnight. So you can't help but miss the fact that New Year has occurred.
Exactly right. And then there's that countdown on TV. If you're not in New York City now, for many years, I was in New York City. And even if I didn't have a date, there'd be a group of us friends and we'd go out and we'd have a great meal. We'd go out dancing and we'd make sure we were on the dance floor dancing our you know what off at just that time when that clock went bing, when the ball dropped, all those things. And I never aspired personally to be in Times Square because I always thought that was a little too much of a crush for me, but many people enjoy it. But there was always that celebratory urge. And later, when I lived in Connecticut, especially when we started having a family and things, it would be a big adventure for the kids because we would bring them to the family-based New Year's party. There would always be great food and snacks galore, and we'd all be there, even the babies, doing the countdown with the TV. Now, that was then. Now we have a few other ideas for you.
Yes, and these are great ideas. And it's still celebratory, just different. Remember, we are two crones, so our lives have changed.
Indeed.
But we do want to share these with you because I've been doing these actually for a couple of years, probably before I reached cronehood, because they just seem to work with my lifestyle. So one of the first things that I started to do would be to take some time to sit and review the year. Now, granted, this may have been done on New Year's Day because we were still partying on New Year's Eve when I first got married. But we would just sit, or I would sit. Larry wasn't really into this. And I would review the whole year, the difficult times, the good times, and just take away from that what I could keep and what I wanted to throw away. I would journal it, and I would take pieces of paper, and I would write down the things that I wanted to get rid of. Memories that didn't serve me, things that may not have gone well over the year, perhaps things that I found in myself that I didn't like so well.
Mm.
So write it down on a piece of paper. And then I would go out and I'd put it in a pot, fireproof pot, and I would burn them and give them up to the earth. And that was it. Fresh start, totally fresh start. I actually, I'm just thinking, I actually did this with a group of us. We went out to dinner on New Year's Eve, came back to the house, and I gave the papers out to everybody.
Uh-huh.
And I told them, hold on to them. Keep the things you want for next year, the year coming in, and write down the things you don't want. And everybody did it. I was shocked. They were
I
like,
think
they were
I
into it.
I think that's marvelous. Well, I think historically, typically, the new year is a time when we think about turning a new page anyway. So that's a wonderful practice. It could be included with party guests, or it could be, and I could imagine a really lovely march out, grab your coats, march out, get that fireproof vessel lit, and throw the paper in there saying, good riddance, goodbye, thank you, I'm done, any number of things.
That's exactly what happened too.
Of
Perfect,
course.
Linda. People really enjoyed that. So I would encourage you to think about doing something like that. So, Linda, do you have anything that you want to manifest this year?
Yes, in fact, I do. We're so excited about being here with you doing a podcast, and we have some ideas about how we're going to build that out. One thing that we plan to do is, as a gift to you, early in 2023, we will be offering up a net of light meditation that will be a gift, a different podcast that we'll give to you. And it is going to be very exciting and very soothing and very inclusive. It'll have all the right things that you'll be able to do. And we're super excited because we have some other things that we're going to be manifesting in the new year. We're going to be doing some classes together that you'll learn about. We'll be doing further podcast material. And I think we're going to be doing a book. So those are quite a few things. Betty, how about you?
I think you covered it, actually. That is a lot. Minerva,
I
of
know.
course, will be offering some classes. It's
Great.
just going to be a new year, and doing the podcast has been received so well that it's really opened the door for us to think about doing other things. And, a lot of that will be through the Minerva Educational and Wellness Treatment Center,
Yes.
otherwise known as minervaed.com. And if you check on that, you'll find a lot of the new things that we're going to be bringing up and manifesting for you this year. But to get back to the actual day of New Year's, one of the things that I always do, and I don't know about you, Linda, but it's imperative for me to change the energy in the house.
Oh, here, here.
Things
Yes.
have been rolling along, and good, bad, indifferent, whatever. I just want a clean slate to start with.
Yep.
So I'm either going to take what I call my energy broom and sweep out all the rooms energetically. And if you're confused on how to do that, I will put up a short reel on our Facebook page so that you can see how that works. It's really super, super simple.
Yep.
Or you can smudge your house or your apartment. Again, if you have smoke alarms, be careful. You can also use a sage and sweetgrass spray if you want to, and they're readily available. I make them up. I will be giving them as gifts this year to my friends in a little package of things that I've made up for them, because I do this every night before I go to bed. I spray my room so that we're living in a completely clear energy space while we're sleeping.
I love this. And I do all those things. I love using a ritual broom to clear the energy from all the rooms and invite it to go outside. But keep in mind, we did a podcast on this too. If anyone is interested in a little more in-depth dive, look at podcast number 3. 2 is clearing, and number 3 is protection from outside influences. Both of those podcasts are chock full of ways that you can energetically and manually clear your space. So great idea, Betty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important
It
because you
is.
want that stagnant energy to get moved out,
You bet.
and during the winter months, at least here in the Northeast, we're stuck in the house a lot.
You bet.
So you want that clear energy that you're going to be living in, that you'll be able to create things, whether it's a podcast or whether it's crocheting or knitting or quilting or whatever you're doing. This is our creative time. Writing a book, writing articles, all kinds of things you can do. You want a nice, clear space for that.
And just like you'd clean your kitchen after you finish cooking a big meal, it's a great idea to energetically clear your house and your space after you finish the year.
Absolutely. The other thing I usually do is I do a card reading for myself.
Oh, I love that.
I have multiple decks of cards.
Oh, ditto.
And I always put one card down for the past. The middle card will be for the current times, and the third card will be for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I always use them as a guide. They're a guide.
Exactly.
And that just keeps me on the right path. And you would be amazed at all the different things that will come into your consciousness when you start reading what goes with that different card.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many wonderful decks out there. One of the classics is the Tarot deck, which many people will have heard of, but there are many other oracle decks out there that are absolutely lovely and filled with tidbits of information based on plant or animal or pictures. There are all kinds of wonderful thoughts out there. One of the things I do too is I sometimes will use a book as an oracle. And what I do is if it's a book of a favorite poetry, for example, I may just randomly open up any page in that book and see what comes up, because often it's always interesting the way there'll be some concordance with whatever my question I posed is or whatever I'm thinking about in the moment.
Absolutely. I have friends who use Bibles, and they'll open the Bible, and whatever passage comes up, that's their message.
Yeah. And it's a similar process, just using the Bible, right? Well, one of the things that I like to do too, and we talked about this earlier, is review lifestyle habits. And this harks back to what we were talking about when we said, what do we want to keep from the year? What do we want to change? Because review eating and sleeping. Remember Sleep and Rest, our podcast number 4, and exercise and meditation. Now, not everyone can follow a meditative, quiet practice. That's the reason for me, at least, being more of a kinesthetic learner, sometimes a moving meditation, a walking meditation is so much more accessible. It's not only closing your eyes and focusing on your breath. It can be so many different ways that we can get there. Also, there are other meditation-based movement practices like yoga or qigong. So many ways to practice. Also, Betty, you and I were talking right before we started this podcast about the importance of breath. Being aware of our breath, no matter where we are, it's always with us. It's part of the nature of being human. And so if you're watching your breath and you want to be aware of your breath, tie that in with 2 different practices that we will be reminding you of at the end, which is grounding, which was our podcast number 1, and clearing techniques, which is podcast number 2. But no matter what situation is, just take a moment, inhale, exhale. And sometimes you can inhale thinking of bringing fresh energy in and very simplistically just exhale, releasing whatever tension is grabbing you in the moment. And a practice that simple can be so profound.
I can't tell you how many times I use that during the day.
Yeah.
I don't even think about it anymore. And as I do it, I often check my body to see, where am I holding the tension? Because I know I
Right.
am
Right. We all
holding it
do.
someplace. Yep.
We all do. It's natural. It's how we're built. Yeah. Thanks, Betty. Then another thing that we talked about, and I get very excited by this, is why not learn something new? Why not put that on one of the things that you'd like to accomplish this year? And it doesn't have to be in a very structured way. Just pick something that excites you. I do want to offer up, though, on Minerva Ed, we do offer classes. And in fact, I teach a series of classes I call the Feminine Wisdom series. And it's about goddesses from the world pantheon. And in fact, I'd like to share a little story here. This story is going to lead up to what I call one of my favorite practices, which is the basket of love and light. So here's the story. Have you ever heard of Spider Woman? Spider Woman is the original creatrix and spinner of worlds and universes into existence. She's sacred to several Southwest First Nations tribes, including Hopi, Pueblo peoples, Apache, and Navajo. Her stories abound, and she's known by many names, including Spider Woman and Spider Grandmother and Thinking Woman or Thought Woman. And this is how it works for her. As soon as she thinks of a thing, it springs into existence. So in her story, she spun a web from east to west and from north to south. And then, and I love this part, she sang a song so very deep and sweet that all beings sprang into existence with her song. How beautiful is that? You know, half a world away in Sanskrit, there's a concept about the root sound of each object, which when sung properly can make that thing spring into being. So if I was, and I'm not, really adept at Sanskrit and sang the sound for orange, bing, it would spring into existence in my hand. So when I studied with Oshana, she stated that the Hopi, the Pueblos, and their tribes were the feminine wisdom keepers, and the masculine wisdom keepers were the Tibetan priests. In her tradition, or monks, in her tradition, the two wisdom keepers help sing the songs to keep the world spinning correctly on its axis. Personally, I love that song and sound as a means of creation are actually held sacred in both traditions. So here's a practice for you. See about and imagine that there is a giant, immense basket filled with love and light, woven with strands of love and light, and be adventurous. Imagine how big it could be. This giant basket of love and light, bigger than your car, bigger than your house, as big as a football field, at least. And in this basket of love and light, anytime you have a problem that is bothering you, that you can't manage to solve, that you want to think about, that you want to sort of find a solution that's creative for, toss it into that basket of love and light. You're engaging Spider Woman. You're engaging her essence, her creative essence. There's something else about Spider Woman that I want to share. Just like Betty and I, she's a crone. She's almost always the crone aspect of the goddess, the elder stateswoman. Now, in many different worlds, there are maiden, mother, queen, crone, triple or quadruple goddesses talked about. And one of the reasons Betty and I started this podcast is because we really felt that we wanted to be able to use a little bit of straight speech and tough love, which is a type of wisdom, as well as love and comfort, to be able to share practices that we've gleaned over our quite a few decades, we won't say how many, on the planet. So the crone means the wise crown, like a halo. She's lived, and we have lived through so much, that she's able to distill advice, help, and divine intervention into nuggets of jeweled wisdom from the depths. She's the overcomer of obstacles and a spiritual midwife fostering profound transformation. So when we talk about the crone, we mean a wise one. So here we are. Call on Spider Woman, or open up that basket of love and light, toss your problems in there, and just see what comes out. Now, I have an interesting story to tell. At one point in time, my daughter, who's now 25, was in college. She really needed a car to get around campus and get to a job, but I didn't really have the funds for that. So I tossed this in the basket of love and light. I said, wow, I really need a car for my daughter, but I can't afford to pay for helping her with college and a car. We need somehow a car to be sent to her that's going to be in good shape, be reliable, be drivable for a younger driver, and going to be something that can be manifested in a sort of easy and straightforward way. This is a big ask. I had no idea in my mind how anything like this could possibly happen. I tossed it in the big basket of love and light. She and I nodded our heads and said, yep, let's just see what can happen. We don't have the money for it, but let's see what happens. 3 weeks later, on New Year's Day, we were over at family's house, and don't you know, her uncle sat her down and said, Ariel, you know, I have this car. I'd gotten it for my son, but he really can't drive it right now for a series of reasons. And I think it would make sense for you to be able to use it. Now, we had absolutely no idea that that was going to happen. But that is one story from the basket of love and light. She still has the car today, and she's still driving it. And it was a trade-off against some money her grandmother had left her. But we were both quite happy to have money from that applied in order to give her the car that she needed. So, small or large, throw those things in the basket of love and light. See what happens.
And I would just like to point out that when you do something like that, be specific. Be specific.
It's helpful.
Yes, it is. Because I had this vision when you were telling us the story, what if you had just put in Ariel needs a car, and the next thing that showed up was an old junker. It was drivable.
Well, this is where it's very helpful. I was very specific.
You were, yeah.
A certified used, check it was.
Mhm.
Great mileage, check it was. Great size and scope for a young driver, check it was. And free to me, check it was. As really, but I know that sounds fantastic, but there are things that you can do that are outside the norm of even what we can imagine.
Absolutely. I've used that basket of love and light. It does work. It may take time, though. Don't expect instant response here. It goes in a basket for a reason, so it can sit and marinate, and spirit has to figure out how to manufacture this or manifest it. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yep. Well, I think that we've covered a lot of ground here. I hope you've learned some things, or it's sparked interest for you to try something new for the new year, or really anytime you need a reset. I'm going to leave you with musings from a bumper sticker. This is one of my favorite bumper stickers. It says, change happens at the speed of thought. And I find that to be true.
It's true. You're right. And I'm going to leave you with wisdom from our teacher, Oshana. She always said, the only thing we have to give is how we live our life.
Exactly.
I'm just going to repeat that because it's so important. The only thing we have to give is how we live our life. So take that, put it in your heart, sit with it for a while, because it's true.
Yeah,
Absolutely true.
it sure is. Two wise crones say, here's your wisdom practice to put into action. Make a commitment to grounding and centering. Keep in mind that was covered extensively in podcast number 1 and 2. And so we'd also encourage you to find your breath, be aware of it, even in difficult situations. Just a one breath with intentionality can help turn around that energy. So this has been so wonderful to be able to share and chat with you about all this. To stay up to date on our content, check out our social media platforms. Look for the picture of our 2 owls for 2 crones. Join our Facebook page, 2 crones and a microphone, TWO Crones. Find us on Instagram at number 2 crones and a microphone. Please leave comments. We'd love to hear from you and love to respond. We're also available on LinkedIn. And big, huge, heartfelt shout out and thanks to Francine Rambousek, our amazing producer, content developer, social media manager, and photographer. And I'm sure she has a couple other hats there we've forgotten to mention because she's amazing.
She absolutely is, really.
Yeah,
She's a treasure.
I'll say.
So if you have a preferred technique or something that really works for you, please share it with us. If you put it on our 2 Crones and a Microphone Facebook page, other people can see it. We can dialogue about it. And remember, you will be helping others, as we are, to navigate the muddy waters of our time.
I love it. That's it. We become the helping hands as we learn all these different practices and how we can help others. Our next podcast will be on creating intentional downtime for yourself. Until then, be well.
And happy
New
New Year.
Year. I love it.